Sherlock Holmes, Joe Gargery, Popeye the Sailor, Bilbo Baggins, Jules Maigret. These are 5 of my favorite fictional pipe-smoking characters. And with each of them comes a different set of traits and ideas that I think are worth discussing. So let's talk about them.
Well, if you've had enough to eat, Watson, and you're feeling in better spirits, I think we'd better be getting along.
Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, the world-famous pipe-smoking detective created by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Brilliant, introverted, eccentric, and often moody, Holmes has long been one of my favorite fictional characters. One of the things that makes Holmes so compelling is his extraordinary power of observation. He notices details that everyone else overlooks, carefully studying the people and environments around him in order to piece together the truth behind a mystery. Holmes also believed in mastering only the subjects he considered useful to his work. He developed an incredibly precise knowledge of areas like anatomy and poisons, while dismissing information he saw as irrelevant. But Holmes is not simply intelligent. He is deeply introspective. He often withdraws into solitude to think, reflect, and mentally recharge so that his intellectual curiosity can be used for productive purposes. At the same time, Holmes is far from perfect. He can be arrogant, impatient, and emotionally distant. But those flaws are a part of what make him feel human. They give his character realism and depth. One of my favorite Sherlock Holmes quotes has to do with the pipe itself. In the 1891 short story, The Red-Headed League, while thinking through a difficult case, Holmes says to Watson, quote, "It is quite a 3-pipe problem, and I beg that you won't speak to me for 50 minutes. For Holmes, the pipe was more than a habit. It was a part of contemplation and deep thought. It was a way to slow down, clear the mind, process information with intention, and come to an intellectual conclusion."
Hello, Joe.
Joe Gargery. Now this next character may be a little more obscure, but Joe Gargery, from Great Expectations, may honestly be one of my favorite characters in all of literature. He is the kind, honest blacksmith who becomes a father figure to Pip, the story's main character. Joe Gargery is a humble blacksmith living in the marshes of Kent, England, and he's the brother-in-law of Pip. From society's perspective, Joe is looked down upon a lot. He's poor, lower class, illiterate, married to a harsh wife, and sometimes socially awkward. Throughout Pip's childhood, Joe acts as a source of kindness and protection, often shielding Pip emotionally and sometimes physically from his sister's harsh treatment. Later in the story, we see a situation where Pip secretly steals food and a file to help an escaped convict, and Joe quietly protects him instead of exposing or shaming him. As Pip grows older and begins to pursue wealth and status in London society, he slowly becomes embarrassed by Joe's simplicity and working class background. Joe recognizes this almost immediately. Rather than becoming angry or resentful, Joe quietly leaves so Pip will not feel uncomfortable around him. The note he leaves behind is one of the most heartbreaking moments in the novel. The note says, quote, "Ever the best of friends, ain't us, Pip?" Joe never becomes bitter and always values Pip as his friend. Later still, after Pip becomes sick, emotionally abandoned, and buried in debt, it is Joe who comes to London to care for him. He nurses him back to health, and he secretly pays off his debts without asking for recognition or repayment. Joe represents loyalty, humility, kindness, and unconditional love. Throughout the novel, we often see Joe smoking a pipe beside the warmth of a forge or the hearth. For Joe, the pipe feels less like escapism and more like a small source of comfort and peace amid a physically, financially, and emotionally difficult life. I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Why biffs and I bops them and always outroughs them, but none of them gets nowhere.
Popeye. Popeye is one of the most recognizable pipe-smoking characters in pop culture. He's a cartoon sailor who first appeared in early comic strips and later became an animated icon. At his core, Popeye is defined by persistence and a kind of rough-edged moral confidence. He's not polished or refined. He's a working-class sailor who speaks his mind, stands up for the underdog, and refuses to back down when things get difficult. The pipe is definitely part of that image. It's not treated as something sophisticated or ornamental, but almost as an extension of his rhythm and personality. In many scenes, it's simply there as he talks, thinks, or reacts, reinforcing his steady, no-nonsense demeanor. What's especially interesting is that Popeye's pipe is often more than a prop. He regularly uses it as a tool to solve problems or to protect others. In different cartoons, the pipe becomes a whistle, a horn, a blowtorch, a propeller, or even a way to create bursts of air or smoke in difficult situations. The pipe helps to create a greater picture of Popeye's resourcefulness. Popeye survives not because he's elegant or some intellectual genius, but because he adapts. Even before the spinach kicks in, he's usually trying to outthink the situation and use whatever he has available to help himself or someone else. Popeye's character is a mix of toughness and loyalty. He's courageous, hardworking, protective, resourceful, independent, and surprisingly compassionate beneath his rough exterior. He can be stubborn, abrasive, and hot-tempered, but he's also dependable and deeply committed to defending people who are weaker or being mistreated. And that combination of grit and humor, sincerity, and resilience is a big part of why the character has endured for generations. Bilbo Baggins. Bilbo Baggins is a very different kind of pipe-smoking character than Popeye, Sherlock Holmes, or Joe Gargery, but in many ways he reflects another side of why pipes became such enduring symbols in fiction. Being a hobbit from the Shire, Bilbo begins as someone who values comfort, peace, routine, and the quiet pleasures of home. His pipe isn't associated with toughness or bravado. It's tied to reflection, hospitality, and slowing down long enough to appreciate the world around him. In Tolkien's stories, moments of smoking are often connected with rest after hardship, conversation among friends, or thoughtful contemplation. The pipe becomes part of the atmosphere of the Shire itself, calm, grounded, and a reminder of the comforts of being home. But Bilbo is far more than a comfort-loving hobbit. As his journey unfolds, he reveals qualities that are easy to overlook at first glance. He's clever, compassionate, loyal, curious, humble, courageous, and surprisingly resilient. He often succeeds not through strength, but through wisdom, mercy, and persistence. Even when he's afraid, he continues forward, and that inner courage becomes one of his defining traits. What makes Bilbo especially compelling is that the pipe contrasts with the danger surrounding him. While dragons, goblins, and war dominate the world outside the Shire, Bilbo carries with him reminders of peace, civilization, and taking a moment to slow down and enjoy the gifts given to us in tough situations. The pipe represents a refusal to let chaos completely consume his identity. Even after experiencing hardship and adventure, he retains a sense of gentleness and reflection, rather than becoming hardened or cynical. Jules Maigret. Jules Maigret represents a very different kind of fictional pipe smoker than many of the larger-than-life characters that are often associated with pipes. For those unfamiliar with him, Maigret is a French detective who appears in dozens of novels and television adaptations. Unlike many fictional detectives, he isn't flashy, eccentric, or dramatically theatrical. He's a middle-aged police inspector who solves crimes through patience, observation, and an unusually deep understanding of human behavior. Where some pipe-smoking characters feel adventurous or eccentric, Maigret feels grounded, patient, and deeply human. His pipe is almost inseparable from his method of thinking. In the novels and adaptations, it's often present during long walks, quiet observations, or moments where he's absorbing the atmosphere around the people he's investigating. The pipe doesn't symbolize action as much as contemplation. Maigret's defining qualities are patience, empathy, emotional intelligence, persistence, humility, and calmness. He isn't obsessed with proving his brilliance or dazzling people with deductions. Instead, he tries to understand people, their fears, motives, weaknesses, and their loneliness. He listens more than he speaks, and he often solves crimes by slowly immersing himself in the lives of ordinary individuals until the emotional truth of the case is revealed. I think smoking a pipe has, in some way, helped keep these characters memorable for generations. The pipe often becomes symbolic of something deeper within each character. For Sherlock Holmes, it represents contemplation and intellectual focus. For Joe Gargery, comfort and humility. For Popeye, resilience and resourcefulness. For Bilbo, peace and reflection. And for Maigret, patience and human understanding. These characters are all incredibly different, yet the pipe consistently becomes associated with slowing down, observing the world carefully, and finding comfort in the smaller things in life. I think that's part of what still draws many people to these characters and to pipe smoking today.